ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לעשות בדברי תורה.
What chapter?
Amid Vav.
It's chapter 32. Chapter 32 on page 1185.
Happy end of the year. 11:32.
No,
1185.
Join us.
We were, yeah.
So, yeah, the Hafkarat is one chapter, it's chapter 32. Okay, so, just to make sure everybody's up with us, the story, we are now at the very final days, maybe the final hours of Moshe. He's, saying goodbye to the flock, the children of Israel he's been leading for the last pretty much 40 years. He's ready to turn over leadership to Aaron, well, not
Joshua.
to Joshua and to Aaron's sons. And he's giving his final talk. Well, he's giving his final talks. I think they're, depending how you count, there are 4 or 5 of them. And he sort of ends up with this, I don't know if you want to call it a song or a poem or something like that, where it almost, well, we'll talk about it a little bit, but it seems as a final message, a little bit out of place. And maybe we can talk a little bit about what's going on here in this last little portion of Moses.
But by out of place, you mean it's in the wrong place in the Torah?
It seems to be the kind of thing you wouldn't want to say as you're saying goodbye, good luck.
Oh, okay,
you know.
that kind of out.
Yeah. There are people who think it's out of place in the Torah as well. So we can talk about that if you want to do more documentary hypothesis kinds of stuff. I guess we can talk about that in the Yamim Noraim. So anyway. So maybe I should start off by asking, well, maybe you should read it first, but I also want to ask you, why is this, what makes this poetic? It's not the rhyming, which is what we usually think about. Is it the rhythm? Is it the phrasing? Is it the, I don't know,
To me, it's the way it's
Literary.
written, the Torah.
Yeah.
Because written differently.
it's written differently? What makes this, and was this a poem or was it a song? And why end this way? Generally speaking, poems or songs seem to be the oldest part of the Torah, part of any ancient Near East literature, because they were supposedly easier to memorize. Because this is all an oral culture,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
very few people could actually read. So this is something maybe that was more, supposed to be more memorized, whether it's really more memorable or
How
not.
about because poetry is harder to understand, it has hidden meaning, prose doesn't.
Well, that's a good point. Poetry also has hidden meanings, which makes me ask the question again, why, if you're ending your reign, you're ending your leadership, you're turning things over, you want to give people a good start in the new destination, the new year, whatever, why make it obscure?
He's angry.
He's angry? Because,
He doesn't want, actually, I'm thinking he knows what's gonna happen, but he doesn't want to reveal too much.
all right, it's an interesting way of looking at this passage. We'll kind of read through it, but he's predicting what already has not happened. He's already predicting what has not happened yet. And is it useful to tell people that? I mean, I think that's kind of anyway.
But you're right, I remember reading that in some of the cases, even in the Bible, they have taken stories or poems from other literature and adapted them to make them Jewish, or put in the Bible, that all the poetry would appear that way, so he may have, well, this is what you do. And he just copied what was the other style. I don't know, I haven't read the others.
The big example, what I would say is Shirim.
Yeah. Right, the whole book is a kind of song, right?
Yeah, but I mean, the words don't mean what we think it means. True, how we interpret it today.
Right, right.
But you know, Rabbi, many people have said the entire Torah is considered a musical, a song, in the sense that you chant it when you read it aloud, you know.
Right.
So I think that it's whatever you'd want to classify it, a song, a poem. I mean, it's something definitely more on a musical level, I think.
But part of the reason why we chant it rather than saying it, reading it, is because that adds the punctuation,
Right,
because there's no punctuation in the Torah.
right. It's one big, it's 5 well-known sentences.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Without
Run-on
chanting it, you don't know
Huh?
what, you don't.
Run-on sentences.
It's 5 run-on sentences, right.
I think Nelson.
Yeah.
Oh, is there? Yeah,
Also, he's giving, I mean, if this is what we're looking at in chapter 32,
Right.
give ear, O heavens, that I may speak in, and let the earth hear my mouth's utterances. This poem is being addressed to the heavens and the earth,
Right.
to the natural world. I mean, the covenant in the ancient Near Eastern covenant between as a treaty, the heavens and the earth were called on to be the witness
right.
of heaven, and to keep it, that would be they would be the ultimate arbiters in a way. And we see that here in this poem.
Right. You just stole my thunder with thanks, man. But yeah, he's calling heaven and earth a witness. What's gonna happen? I'm telling you, and yeah, the natural world is my witness, right? So,
Nelson.
oh, Nelson, I'm sorry.
That's okay. He's a cranky old man. Maybe he's the paradigm for cranky old men. And he gets to crank in poetry that, if you have to just read it, you can just sort of pass by. But now he's going to say, you're terrible people. You're going to be terrible people.
Right,
And he wants to emphasize that. That's
right. Which again seems to me like the last thing you would want to say when you're sending them off and, you're going up to Mount Nebo, you're gonna be gathered to your ancestors, you're turning over to new leadership. Let's have some kind of transition here, right?
it's a
So I hand
stereotype
it over
of an
before
old
you
cranky
ask
guy.
Sorry? Okay, part of this is also organized more poetically, sometimes what we call chiasm, where you say A, B, B, A. So give ear, O heaven, let me speak, let the earth hear the words I utter. So it's the same thought, but said, Zinu hashamayim va'adabera, let the heavens hear and I'll speak. Tishma haaretz imrei fi. So then it's kind of reversed a little bit. So we have this chiastic organization through some of it. I couldn't find it all the way through, but it starts off that way.
Couldn't find it in the English or the Hebrew.
Huh? What?
You couldn't find.
I couldn't find it in the Hebrew all the way through. Sometimes it just goes on Nelson says, it goes on a rant. The teleprompter goes out, whatever happens, and he just kind of goes on a rant. Well, let me start off. So, or does somebody want to read? I think that's how we usually do. Somebody? Thank you.
Okay. Should I start at the very beginning?
Yeah, start at the beginning.
Give ear, O heavens, let me speak. Let the earth hear the words I utter. May my discourse come down as the rain, my speech distill as the dew. Let showers on young growth like droplets on the grass. For the name of the Lord I proclaim, give glory to our God.
All right, thank you. Let's just, what does it mean, let my words come down as rain, as dew? What's he really saying?
May it sprout something else.
Okay.
Let it soak in.
Let it soak in.
The droplet suggests to me something gentle and calm and motivating and uplifting.
Right. And this turns into a thunderstorm, right? But yeah, it starts off, let these words come down, let them nourish you, let them be calm, gentle. May good sprout out of them, something like that. It's kind of starting off with a nice symbolism. Right? You wanna go on a little bit?
Okay, thank you. The rock, his deeds are perfect. Yea, all his ways are just. A faithful God never fall. True and upright is he.
Okay, good theological statement, right? He is our rock, God is steady, something you can trust, right? Okay, so far, it's pretty nice, pretty gentle, right? Huh?
Pretty nice.
Well,
Great line.
yeah. All right. The clouds come, right? Go ahead.
Children unworthy of him, that crooked, perverse generation. Their baseness has played him false. Do you thus requite the Lord, O dull and witless people? Is not he the Father who created you, fashioned you, and made you endure?
So let me ask here, this crooked perverse generation, which generation is he talking about?
The last,
The one in front of him?
the one, no, the one that was 40 years ago that didn't cross over. I think that's
Is
the
that the
one,
golden calf one?
yeah.
That would be the golden calf one, yeah.
The generation that received the 10 Commandments,
Right, that was the previous generation, right?
right?
So it would be the people he's talking to, their parents.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, so this is a rededication, a covenant renewal act. And, those that were at the Sinai, in a way, the implication is they betrayed the Torah, the words that were given. And that's why they perished in the desert.
Okay, so he's not talking, he's telling the people in front of him, look what they did, right? Actually, the Hebrew is kind of interesting, so shichet lo banav mumam. They, the crooked perverse generation, lo banav, they are not his children, right? Right, did he disown them? I mean, it's just an interesting expression that he's talking about the previous generation as lo banav. They were not his children.
Seems like there's a parent-child kind of analogy, and it's a parent who's got real old style parenting skills.
Yeah,
Where
yeah,
like, you think you're so smart, you were terrible. You
right.
did this, you did that, and instead of trying to encourage them and speak to their better natures.
Right. So, yeah, he's scolding them,
Yeah.
but he's not scolding them. He's scolding well, I think he's scolding the parents, right? The previous generation.
Yeah. But it kind of feels like he's also scolding them, how that people were cursed for multiple generations,
Right.
Jacob is very simple when he goes down the litany of his children.
Right.
They don't come away too well. Like that either.
Yeah. So, yeah, so this nice gentle raindrop dew beginning has
Very
now,
quickly, yeah.
yeah, it's becoming a storm, right? Any other? All right, somebody else want to read?
I just want to add that if you criticize my parents, maybe you're not criticizing me, but I don't like it.
Right.
Also, you didn't have much control over what your parents did either, you know?
But you'll have control over what you do, and this is a warning.
Yeah.
Right. And you wonder to what extent this generation, right, in year 39.5, right? To what extent do they realize they're replacing their parents because the parents just weren't good enough for the land? So he's reminding them maybe of that as well.
You know, this is going to Rosh Hashanah. I mean, you know, when you think about what happened to the people that were in Canaan, were, you know, when we took over the land and then the temple was destroyed in 586, they were exiled to Babylonia.
Right.
Those people are reading this text now and they're taking consolation in it. You know, it's like, you know, they supposedly betrayed the covenant and therefore they were exiled, found themselves in Babylonia, and, you know, they were totally demoralized and depressed. And these words, perhaps, or, you know, I mean, you know, when Ezra came back and read to them, Ezra and Nehemiah, they were reading from the book of Deuteronomy.
Right.
It you know, it helped them get going again, in a sense. You see what I'm saying? So that Moses is, you know, Deuteronomy is speaking, Moses is speaking not only to the generation now that is going into the land, but he's speaking to those that are just coming back, the ones that has suffered in Babylonia, and you know, now they're coming back. It's kind of just like Teshuvah.
Right. I want to come back to that point because I think it's a really important one, that what we have here is a book that's, I mean, the book of Deuteronomy could have been already an answer to why do we go into exile and why are we being defeated and so forth. And it's putting in Moses' mouth what's happening, you know, 5 centuries later. With the exile and the return. So I want to come back to that theme because it's a kind of an interest, well, there's more complications there. But yeah, I think you've got a point, yeah. So anybody else want to read?
Consider the years of ages past. And your thoughts, you and set the divisions of the. He fixed the boundaries of people in relation to Israel's numbers. For the Lord's portion is his people. Israel is known allotment.
All right, what do you make of this?
I have an issue with verse 7 because the people he's asking them about to ask are gone.
Or dead.
Yeah, how do you ask somebody who's not there anymore?
So which raises, is he talking, again, assuming this is taking place at you know, at the end of Moses's tenure, is he talking to the grand, huh?
40 year, not 10 year.
How much time do we have? Is he talking to the children, huh?
As much as you need.
36 minutes.
He's talking to the grandchildren and saying, ask her, why are they the ones coming into the land? Because their parents, your grandparents, are the ones who banned them. Is that who he's talking to? And is he telling them that their parents are bad?
Would you be telling it to?
Could be.
Well, you know, somebody between 0 and 60. Except for Caleb and Joshua.
Right. So you presumably got at least 2 generations in front of him at this point, right? The children of the Exodus generation and their children. So I always think about this verse when he says, ask your father and he will inform you. Well, the ones that can inform you are the generation that's passed away. They were there at Sinai. They saw the revelation. They got the Ten Commandments. They're the ones who should be doing the teaching, but they're gone.
Because, at this stage, everything in the world,
Right.
all the traditions will already passed down.
Right.
And you would think, if you ask your father, he would have learned from his father.
Oh, right.
So, whether it's one or two generations removed from Sinai, I think that the father's generation would know,
Right.
will pass down to the next.
Yeah.
And also, could they not find people whose memory is not so blank, who does remember certain things?
Right.
Some of the elders, they are, a few of them might have lasted. And they can say, oh, I remember this happened at such and such a time.
Right.
Technically, I never really thought about this. Technically, I think it was the man who died. I don't know about the woman.
Oh, I just assumed they all died.
I've always assumed that too, but I'm not so sure about it.
I don't know.
Because, one of the Midrashim is that the oldest person or something has come out of Egypt and remembered where the bones were and stuff.
Right.
You know, and I thought the Midrash was that she made it to Israel. But it's Midrash. so-
Yeah. And so, and we've also got God now, giving the people their, dividing various peoples up. It's as if the land's already been divided out. The Canaanites are here, the Moabites are there, the Ammonites are over there, the Edomites, are, what, blah, 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 plus the tribes. It seems to be kind of hinting at that, even though they haven't quite entered the land yet.
It hasn't been apportioned.
Exactly, yeah.
Joshua does that.
that.
Right. So this is, either this is really looking forward and saying this is what God is going to do, or to go to Ivan's point that maybe this is looking back. We've gone through defeat, we've gone through exile, we've gone through all of this. We've gone to a time when we all had our allotted land, and we've lost it. Right? And is God still our God? I think there's a larger theological question going on here. So he may be thinking, this may be addressing a generation of kind of the second, Exodus, the people coming back from the Babylonian exile and trying to explain to them what happened.
Right, it allows us, exile and return, becomes the template for the survival of the Jewish people. They go here, they go there, they get, they're defeated, they're exiled, but they have hope that, that they'll return. Again, this is teshuvah. Teshuvah is a physical act, but also a spiritual act, right? It's a repentance. If you repent and you change your ways, then you will return. So, for 2,000 years, this is what kept us going, the Torah, basically.
Yeah. I mean, this is, which makes this really appropriate for Shabbat Shuvah, right?
Yeah.
And for the Yamin Noraim, exile return, right? Every year we have to come back and say, yeah, we really tried, we screwed up again, right?
Let's put in see what worked,
Let's
and
look at,
what didn't work.
yeah, what lessons, yeah.
Well, in the commentary and we have here, with respect, he fixed the boundaries of the people in relation to Israel's numbers. And the commentary says that he assigned an angel to, there's two-tier government.
Okay.
God over Israel and all these other nations, he assigned an angel. Well, the nations who made war on Israel. So is this a rebellion of these ruling angels over God? How does this come about?
Okay, let's go on, because it gets kind of worse. You want to read some more, or?
Sure. We found desert region in the inverted the people to God, like an eagle who rouses his nestlings, flies down to so did he spread his wings and take him, bear him along in his pinions. The Lord alone will guide him. No alien God at his side.
Okay, so God finds them in a howling wilderness? Yeah.
I'm thinking about the eagle here.
Okay.
Isn't there somewhere else that says that he brought him out on the wings of eagles or
Yes.
something?
Yeah,
So this is referring back to that.
and this is again from the exile.
Yeah.
Yeah. So who's it talking about? Who's stuck in a howling wilderness?
We were
They are.
people.
Right, who put them there? God. Right, God let them out of Egypt, they rebelled, and golden calf, whatever, and then God says, all right, 38 years. So he didn't find them there, he put them there. No?
But he didn't let them out. He put them there, did not provide that much for them so that they would want to leave.
And maybe decide, hey, we better trust God, because otherwise we're stuck out here, right?
When does he tell the people that they are going to be in Canaan? Is it,
I think that's at the very beginning at Sinai.
Pardon me?
They're going to the promised land.
the promised land? So,
I
okay,
gave your ancestors Abraham, Isaac, Jacob.
okay, but so he tells them that, that's where we hear from Dan to Beersheba or whatever the borders are.
I forget when exactly that happens, but I think so.
It's an interesting comment here. It says, the Sinai where the Israelites roamed before coming and before entering the promised land. The Hebrews say, Eretz Midbar, and it's partly marked by vegetation and sparse water resources.
Right.
I'm looking at verses 10 through 12 and I'm thinking, this is talking about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Ah, okay.
It has nothing to do with this generation at all. Because Goshen was the area that had Goyas, because they were shepherds, so Goshen wouldn't have been the wasteland.
Right, so where they were
No,
living in Egypt was not a wasteland, I think you're right. Right, Goshen was supposed to be a very good sort of pasturing, whatever, shepherding area. Abraham didn't really live in a wilderness.
I mean, he was
Beersheba.
spiritually talking about,
before-
when he found him in Ur. Or when vice versa, whatever happened there.
So is that what he's talking about, Abraham?
Yeah, 'cause,
I
I
don't
mean,
think
Wilderness, meaning he was,
I disagree. I still think this was like you said, the grandparents' generation, the golden calf generation.
okay. So, God finds them in this wilderness, and what you're saying, it's not only a wilderness, an actual physical wilderness, but it's a spiritual wilderness. And, right,
That was the spiritual.
right. God calls Moses up to give him the 10 Commandments, and the next thing God knows, they're building
An effigy.
an effigy. Right? Is that what this means, you think? We found them in a desert region? in an empty howling waste, because I mean, spiritually, they didn't quite get it yet. No?
He found Moses,
Huh?
found Moshe,
Okay.
he found him.
Guided him as the pupil of his eye.
Moshe.
Moshe, so God, the eagle takes up Moshe, okay?
I arrived late, so I'm reluctant to speak up, but
But-
going back to the name of the poem, I'm aligned with what Marlene is saying,
Okay.
that this is really a poem about Moses.
Ah, okay.
Explain more.
That God was guiding and guarding Moses to enable him to lead the people. And the people are disappointing. So there's a duo
Yeah,
going on.
Well, it's the people, you know, in the deserts, you know, the people, you know, become like his, you know, what is the, this, he weds the people as his bride, right? God takes the people, and in the desert, he develops this relationship with them, giving them the commandments and so forth. And you know, it's this is how it began. I mean, the Torah was given in the desert, in between civilizations, right? It was, you know, so that it wasn't about getting the law in any one state or country, you know, or from any government. It came from God, so that when they ultimately they lost their land and their sovereignty, they could still survive. It wasn't contingent on a government. And you know, you know, I mean, maybe I'm expanding it too much, but you know, this is about what happened in the wilderness, right? I mean, you know, there was, you know, he took them on, like on eagle's wings, protected them, made us his treasured people, his chosen people, and in return, we have to be loyal to the covenant. You know, the whole book of Deuteronomy is a covenant and the different parts of the covenant. If you study what that covenant is, you know, the preamble and the stipulations and the witnesses and the, you know, the blessings and curses. And this is sort of at the end.
Yeah, this raises a whole nother question, which I'll get to, yeah.
Well, also, if you think about it, what you said, Ivan, they are leaving Egypt, okay, a very civilized culture. Or I should say a civilization, good culture. They're going into the wilderness. They're going into the promised land. Promised land has a lot of enemies. I mean, there's nothing there. That's really still a wilderness. Babylon is further out, and anything that's civilized that we consider civilization is not in the promised land. You have the Philistines, you have the Canaanites. They're not, we never, when we study civilization of the eastern, of this area, we talk about the Canaanites and all the other people and the Philistines, but it's always in terms of war and what they developed in the way of you know, like spears, what kind of ammunition they developed.
Right.
We don't talk about anything positive like they did some writing the alphabet, which I think it was discovered before the Jews left Egypt. But we don't hear about them being a very cultured group. So in a sense, the promised land is still a wilderness. It's a wilderness for the Jews to develop, for the Israelites to develop and make something out of. And which is exactly what they did, I mean, in the 20th century. They took a country that had been downtrodden and developed water, they made it flourish.
Yeah.
If you want to think about, you make it some current comparison.
Right, well, let's go on a little bit, because I think we're coming to a very crucial part here, so we're at verse 13. What?
Nelson.
Oh, Nelson, were you gonna say something?
Well, I'm having a hard time hearing this conversation. So my mind's maybe in a different place. But it seems to me that the Jews were not, for the most part, they loved Babylon. It was a strange exile. They were exiled from Jerusalem. But most Jews didn't want to go back there. And they didn't go back there. And that what we really have to confront is a difficult question, because I don't think we know anything about it. Maybe you do, Peter, because you're the super expert. What was Jewish life like in Babylon?
Well,
What kept the Jews?
Right. Well, what we seem to know, it's one of those, everybody does archaeology in the Middle East, but nobody does it for this period. They do it earlier or they do it later. It sounds like what happened when there was an exile under the Babylonians, right, of Nebuchadnezzar and Gedaliah, who's with tomorrow's the fast of Gedaliah, right?
Yeah.
Not today. Yeah. But anyway, when the chance came to go back under the Persians, not everybody came back. It looks like who came back were the royal family and some of the priests, because they, had an investment, they had, but other people stayed behind. And we know a couple hundred years later, in Roman times, there was a flourishing Judean community in Babylonia. So Jews not only stayed there, but they thrived and they maintained their Judean identity and were quite creative. Hillel brings the Babylonian tradition back to Eretz Israel, and that's the basis of the Mishnah, right? Hillel and Shammai. So it looks like what happened during the Babylonian exile is that things were much better in Babylonia than they were for a long time in Eretz Israel, where Ezra and Nehemiah also talk about famines in the land and so on and so forth.
The Persian community is so ancient. The Jewish community was so ancient there. I don't think there's too many Jews left in Iran.
Right, right. Well, there are Jews left in Iran, and they say, yeah, we go all the way back to the exile. We've been here for like forever.
Right. Right, well, it's important to remember, though, that the land is critical. The promised land is a critical part of Judaism, right? I mean, it's there's no theme, that's as important in a sense, okay? That to have our own land means that we can have a language, that we have shared values, and yet for so many generations, we had no land. But the objective was always to get back to the land. And we did. The beauty, the template was we lost the land, right? We had it. This is a historical thing. There was a first commonwealth, correct?
Right.
There was a state. There was David, and there were all the, then there was Solomon, and then after Solomon, we lost the land. That we were defeated by the Assyrians first, right?
In exile. Maybe this poem is reflection of that. Let's move on a little bit. So we're at verse 13.
I'll read.
Okay.
He set him atop the highlands to feast on the yield of the earth. He fed him honey from the crag and oil from the flinty rock, herd of kine and milk of flocks, with the best of lambs and rams of Bashan and he-goats, with the very finest wheat, and foaming grape blood was your drink.
Okay.
So it's saying that they weren't in such a wilderness suddenly, that they had good food, you know.
We go to the land and wow, it's, you know, it's the land of milk and honey, literally, man.
And they did some fracking, oil from the rock.
Oil industry, right? Let's keep going.
Hey, we made it in the Torah. Good. The sure grew fat and kicked. You grew fat and gross and coarse, for he's forsook the God who made him, spurred the rock of support. They incensed him with alien things, vexed him with abominations. They sacrificed to demons, no gods, gods they had never known, new ones who came but lately, who stirred not your father's fears. You neglected the rock that begot you, forgot the God who brought you forth.
This really sounds like it's talking about the Babylonian exile. Hey, I brought you in this land, the land was good for you, and what did you do?
One thing that is puzzling is the changing of article. You know, it's like he and then they and then you. It gets, it makes it very vague to whom he is referring. And so maybe it does mean that they're looking at past generations, future generations.
Yeah, and you're right, I was gonna say a little bit about that, but it's talking they, and all of a sudden, it's you, right? Which again, sounds like it's talking about the exile, right? Yeah, they did all kinds of things, but what did you do? Why are you in exile?
Well, it's
But they
very
always have
Jewish.
these gods.
It's like collective and then individual,
Right.
which is very common themes,
Yes.
you know.
Well, let me just say that, you know, while I'm looking at the rock.
Wait,
Okay, I'm sorry.
The fact that there were, they said, they were told, follow me, and they had a choice whether to follow. And they said they would. And then they betrayed what they said, and the betrayal is what is smarter here.
right. Yeah,
Could we focus a bit on the rock,
okay,
which is the connection with Moses? Both his conversation with God and then his mistake of not listening. So it says, you neglected the rock that begot you. And so with Moses, that was the sort of the beginning of the Jewish journey.
I think the problem there is
Yeah.
the Hebrew here, Sur, which is God.
well,
And the rock that you're talking about with Moshe was not called a Sur. I don't know what the right word was.
I thought it-
Well, rock of it, Ma'ot Sur,
Yeah, that's God. But that's
but
not
it's,
the rock.
we translate it into rock of age.
Problem with semantics,
Yeah.
because different language.
but I think the symbolism is there, I think you're right.
That's-
The rock in the wilderness that Moses beat up instead of talked to, right? Gave water, right? Now they're in the Holy Land, the rock is giving them honey.
And Moses' error in, I forget the sequence, not hitting the rock, or he
He hit it when he should have spoken to it.
right, and that was you neglected, you were not listening to me. And so I think there's a connection there.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And the rock symbolism, whatever the word, I think is all the way through, as that's what gives you life, but it can also, you know, can destroy you.
That's the motto. I was thinking what you said, but
Oh,
it's
you're
not.
right.
It's the motto in English and Hebrew. It's not what you're saying.
It's just really hard to decipher this language. And I'm looking at what Robert Alter says about this poem. He says on stylistic grounds, the poem, or at least much of it, could be as early as the period of the Judges, that is the 11th century BCE. That's how long ago this language, that's unbelievable. As with any archaic poem, one encounters rare terms of uncertain meaning and a number of points where the text appears to have been scrambled in scribal transmission, whether out of sheer confusion or through theological censorship of the ancient materials. So the bottom line, it's really hard to decipher this language. It's
Oh, yeah.
so
Yeah.
old.
Yeah, and I'm not meaning to claim that this whole poem was written at one time either, because I think there are a little bit shifts in style. You know, this might be a composite that, you know, every generation sort of added its verses to it, you know.
Isn't this supposed to be the farewell to Moshe?
Yeah, or it's Moshe's welfare to, but that doesn't mean he wrote it or said it.
No, but it doesn't even seem like it's.
Doesn't mean that they. Again, it seems to me that there could have been Moses, you know, God is the person who's your rain, he rains down on you, who gives you nourishment, blah, blah, blah. Yes, it's a whole different kind of atmosphere, you know, it's a whole different kind of message.
For someone who was, who had a stutter, was afraid to speak, you're right. I mean, it's an awfully long poem for him to have recited.
Yeah, and for people to have memorized, I mean, yeah.
They did, they have the Haftarah is also, I mean, was not written as a poem. They constantly have the prayers that are poems.
Yeah.
We can take.
All right, let's go on with 19. We're kind of. I think there's a lot of issue here, but let's do it. No, I'm starting to feel like I'm in the wilderness. All right, go ahead. Something to read?
I can keep going if you
Go.
The Lord saw and was vexed. Wait, am I?
Yeah.
Right. The Lord saw and was vexed and spurned his sons and his daughters.
I need a whip.
Yeah. No mothers. And he said, I will hide my countenance from them and see how they fare in the end. For they are a treacherous breed, children with no loyalty in them. They incensed me with no gods, vexed me with their futilities. I'll incense them with a no folk, vex them with a nation of fools. For a fire has flared in my wrath and burned to the bottom of Sheol. Has consumed the earth and its incense down to the base of the hill. I will sweep misfortunes on them, use up my arrows on them. Wasting famine, ravaging plague, deadly pestilence, and fanged beasts will I let loose against them. With venomous creepers and dust, the sword shall deal death without, as shall the terror within. To youth and maiden alike, the sucklings as well as the aged. I might have reduced them to naught, made their memory cease among men. But for fear of the taunts of the foe, their enemies who might misjudge and say, our own hand has prevailed. None of this was wrought by the Lord, for they are a folk void of sense, lacking in all discernment.
All right, let me stop here for a second.
Ooh.
Yeah. So this is the final message of Moses. So good luck, guys.
That's so much anger.
This is like a tochaha.
Saying God is saying this.
Nonetheless, is that what you want to send the people off with?
It was the ancient Near East.
Yeah.
Right here.
And then God says, and I think this goes back to a point Ivan raised now. So why is God finally going to redeem them? Because God doesn't want other nations to say, you know, you never had a God to begin with, you know, they've got the land. Yeah, their God really isn't
He's worried about his reputation.
worried about his own reputation.
Wasn't that an argument that was made earlier to God when he was gonna wipe out the people and that was what
Right.
Moses?
Moses goes and says, God, look,
Yeah.
what is it?" Right. This is speaking to the generation of the in exile, as we're also doing from Gedalia, right? So we're talking about that exile. How do you deal with the fact that we lost Israel, the north, and now we've lost Judah, the south? How do we, is the covenant over? Like, okay, we screwed up. We didn't keep our half of the bargain. God is moving on to some other people. It's done. This is Jeremiah's message, by the way, right? And to some extent Amos. Right? Is the covenant
Destruction the first time.
first? Is what?
Jeremiah.
Yeah, first. He actually witnessed about the final destruction of Jerusalem and the temple and the exile. He fled to Egypt for a while. Willingly or non-willingly, he may be taken the name. But that's what he's saying. He says, folks, look, the covenant's over.
It isn't.
But it
Because
is, it
even
needs,
from the beginning of the Torah, God has promised us. And, you know, not only numerous as the stars, the grains of sand,
Right,
beaches, but, you know, he predicted many generations forward. So I think that's his ultimate promise.
So maybe, right.
What are the reasons that are given for God choosing the stiff-necked, disobedient people to begin with? He's omnipotent. Why would he select these people who are not in Or Lagoyim? What are the reasons for that?
He wanted a challenge.
As Tevye says,
These were new people.
you can pick somebody.
Right, yeah.
But I don't know, we have time to read much more here, but I mean, you get the sense of what's,
Yes.
and right at the end, there's a little bit of a. But the question is, and I think it's what Ivan was getting at, is if you're talking to the generation that's going to experience the exile. And what are you telling them? Is the covenant over? No, we are still God's people, but they're going to be ups and they're going to be downs, right? And the argument has been made that part of what the hope is about is not about Jews as always victorious and on top and doing wonderful and getting honey out of rocks and all that. Look, we're going to be a small people. We're going to suffer. There's going to be problems. That doesn't mean God isn't around, and it doesn't mean that the covenant is over with. This is a book about survival of the people, no matter what the historical circumstances of the time.
Well, but today,
Right.
Right?
it's very applicable.
And it has been pointed out that for most peoples, right, when you write your national history, it's about victory, it's about how great we were, it's about our great thinkers and so forth. And the Bible is about, yeah, we keep screwing up, but God always brings us back. And we may be in a bad period now, but that doesn't mean the covenant is over. There is time for tshuva, for repentance, for return, and we will continue to survive even in defeat. If we remember that we're the people of God, that we're the people of Israel, and just to hang in there.
Do better.
Yeah, and next year, decade, generation, we can do better. Yeah.
I forget which politician said it, but you campaign in poetry and you govern in prose. And
Wasn't that
this is a poem.
Hmm.
You know, God promised, the covenant was poetry, but the actual execution of getting to this promised land is in prose and lots of sausage.
Yeah. Let me-
parts. I like your use of the word promised.
Yeah.
As long as we have the Tanakh, you know,
And execute.
we'll never lose it, you know?
Let me end with, I'm gonna start with verse 36.
That's ultimate promise.
For the Lord will vindicate his people and take revenge on poor servants. When he sees that their might is gone and neither bond nor food is left, he will say, where are their gods? The rock of whom they sought refuge. Who ate the fat of their offerings and drank their libation wine? Let them rise up to your help and let them be a shield unto you. See then that I am he, there is no God beside me. I deal death and give life, I wound and I will heal. None can deliver from my hand. And then maybe this is Moses speaking, lo, I raise my hand to heavens and say, as I live forever, when I wet my flashing blade and my hand laid against the judgment. So there's a kind of ending where God will eventually give victory to the people. And so that's where Moses leaves things, I think. When that happens with the bracha, we really get to the end of Moses.
Yeah.
Okay. Other thoughts?
There's reason to be optimistic.
Right. And I think it's like you say, it's what we're living through today, right? Yeah, we're gonna go through hard times. But if we remember who we are and our peoplehood, even in diaspora, even in exile, whatever, we will prevail and move forward.
Peter, I happen to notice the last word in this parsha and then the next, and then in the next parsha. I mean, in the very last, this is the second to last parsha for the whole Torah. They both end with the word, Israel. To me, that's very holy. God.
Yes.
All right. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Yesh HaKohen.
With some for the education. Like, it's not a, I just get together. And but then for this last